Welcome to Guns and Whiskey, where I drink whiskey and talk about guns. Today we're going out west and we're going to look at High West whiskey from Park City, Utah. And we're just going to generally talk about the crazy gun laws that there are in California and why you cannot, if you live in California, you are in a restricted state where you are not going to have access to handguns very, very soon and you don't even know it yet. So first off, let's talk about the whiskey here. I was actually turned on to High West by a buddy of mine, Tim. He's opening a distillery, actually a whiskey blendery here in McKinney, Texas. He had a bottle. He's like, hey, try this out. I don't know if it's any good. It's actually pretty tasty, especially considering I'm not a huge fan of ryes. And this is what they're calling a double rye. So it's a blend of rye whiskeys, and it's aged only 2 years. So it's pretty young. 46% alcohol, so what's that, 92 proof, so it's lower on the proof. I think it's just meant to be one of those, bottles that, I don't want to say you look at, but that you go to for a simple pour. Cost me, I got this bottle after I had the other one because I actually enjoyed it. The other one he gave me was not the double rye, I forgot which one it was, but it's an enjoyable pour, so let's get right into it. And, I'm not really, if you think about it, going out west for whiskey, when you think of whiskey and bourbon, you think Kentucky, you think Tennessee, you think everything down in the South. So it's unusual to have a brand that's going to be out there west. So I think that's part of the allure of having something different. But I know they do some pretty cool select bottles. But the High West Double Rye comes up with, it's unusual for a rye to come up with like honey, but it definitely has some honey scent. Hang on. Yeah, getting a lot of honey, and maybe it's just because my wife has, essential oils. I'm getting lavender out of it, which is really weird. Never heard of lavender out of a whiskey before, but okay, yeah, you definitely get the double rye. You definitely get, I don't want to say the lack of age, but it is, it is only 2 years old, so it definitely tastes young, but it's enjoyable. And yeah, I'm reading the bottle and it says, oh, here we go. They've got clove, eucalyptus buttons, evergreen, all kinds of stuff that they're putting in here. I actually didn't read the back of the label before tasting it, so, coming up with essential oils, I guess that is a common thing, but the caramel, so definitely some caramel and vanilla, which I interpreted as honey. But nice finish. This is really good. This is smooth, and I know, people looking at whiskeys and bourbons aren't necessarily looking for smooth, but for me, something that I'm going to sip on that's, not over ice and I'm not watering down, smoothness is definitely there. This could be kind of dangerous. This is so smooth. This is almost like one of those where you'd put it down a little bit faster than you anticipate. So going west for a double rye whiskey, this is actually good. I mean, $30. This is something that I would actually keep around. I would go specifically to look for it, especially for someone who doesn't drink a lot of bourbon or whiskey. This would be a very easy pour for someone new to it. Not quite as easy as like TX, but definitely in that easy pour category. But going out west and then going even further west from Utah, we have California. And working in the gun industry, I work for 1911 and 2011 companies. Rifles, whole different subject there. But I get contacted from California all the time, especially when new models come out. I see it on any manufacturer page. Is this handgun going to be California compliant? The Hellcat. Oh, if only they made it California compliant. The new Glock, what is it? They got 43, 48, whatever it is. Oh, if only they made it California compliant. And what people don't realize is that California has a very thriving gun culture, but they are under a de facto gun ban and they just don't know it yet. So Californians, if you're watching, get out or vote out everybody that's in power, because you will not have access to handguns very shortly and they won't have to ban them outright because of their safe handgun roster. So back in 2006, there was a safe handgun law passed. And what that did is that said that guns manufactured after 2006 had to have a few different features in order for them to be deemed safe and available for sale to the general public in California. One of them was a thumb safety. So you had to have a thumb safety and or a loaded chamber indicator. This is a shield. This was my one of my carry guns that I had when I was out in California. So not the 2.0, just the original shield. So this one came originally with a loaded chamber indicator, and it was in 40 caliber. Don't laugh at me. But that's why there's so many 40 calibers cruising around, because they're still California compliant from the early 2000s. So I had this switched out to a 9mm barrel, and that made the loaded chamber indicator no longer work. So thumb safety, loaded chamber indicator, and a magazine disconnect. And for those of you that don't know what that is, it means that when the magazine is out, the trigger, well, let's take off the safety, the trigger does not do anything. It disconnects until the magazine is inserted, and then the magazine is going to work. So 2006, they said you had to have one of those things. In 2007, they realized that manufacturers said, hey, no problem. We can put a loaded chamber indicator, thumb safety, whatever. It was not a problem. So in 2007, the law changed to said you had to have all of those things: a safety, a loaded chamber indicator, and a magazine disconnect. And that's like, okay, great. So now guns that were made after 2007 had to have those three things, but guns that were made earlier than that did not. They were grandfathered in. So that's why Glock still makes the Glock 19 Gen 3, even though in the rest of the free world we're on Gen 5. It is grandfathered in and still on the California Safe Handgun roster. Well, that wasn't far enough for California, because manufacturers are smart. California is a huge state when it comes to firearm ownership and purchasing. And in 2010, they said, okay, in addition to that, in order to make a handgun safe for purchase, there now needs to be a micro stamp that is put onto every casing that is ejected. So either on the firing pin, some mechanism inside the gun that stamps the gun's model and or serial number. So don't quote me on that. It's at least the serial number of the gun. So if a gun is used in a crime and the casings are collected, that it can be traced back to the gun. Well, the problem is this technology is impossible. So no one has figured out how to reliably get the head of a firing pin to get all that information onto a casing reliably and still have the gun manufacturer. And the lawmakers there in California knew this. So what that means is, as of 2010, no new manufactured guns, so guns that were made, introduced to the market after 2010, no new guns have been in California. So we're going on 12 years that California only gets stuff before that because it's physically impossible. So the lawmakers knew what they were doing, and they definitely slowly boiled that frog. So that means, no matter what a gun is that comes out, Alchemy Custom Weaponry makes in 1911. Disclaimer, I work for them. 1911, okay? It is a 110, sorry, can't do math, 110-year-old design in 45 ACP, 8 rounds, in 9mm, 10 rounds. So it's inside of that capacity, restriction that they have there in California. But even if we went through the trouble of putting a magazine disconnect in it and a loaded chamber indicator, which we could really do, that micro-stamping law means that no new guns, new models of 1911 that are introduced after 2010 can be sold in California. However, if you're a cop, you can get whatever you want, which is crazy. So new 1911s, anytime you see something new come out, don't even bother asking. It's not the manufacturer's fault. It's your own stupid government's fault. 2011s, okay? Outside of the fact that there's capacity limits, but you can get limited capacity mags for 2011s for states like New York and New Jersey. Anything that comes out after 2010, you cannot have in California. So I like to look at California and think of it as Cuba, has cars from the embargo from the 1950s still rolling around. In 10 years, California, these guns are expensive for manufacturers to keep making. They can't make any changes to grandfathered guns. So this shield cannot be changed in any way. They can't change the color and have it stay on the roster. It has to be identical. So if you want, optics ready, you have to go send it off for milling after. So that's the problem with California, is everybody there has been boiled in water so slowly that they haven't jumped out. Now they're figuring it out. but the gun laws are so restrictive that don't blame it on manufacturers when they come out with a new gun and you can't buy it. They would love to sell it to you there in California. Your lawmakers just suck, and that needs to change. So, go out west. You can actually get some nice whiskey blends, but going out west to California and trying to pick up a nice handgun, not going to happen. Everything is 12 years old or older and running around clunkers out there.